episode where the recipe went well. They were on a mission to find this flavour.
It's a very strong,
fishy.
Umami.
And that's what people are on the hunt for.
Hello, welcome to Gobs Goblets, the food and history podcast, hosted by me, Maddie.
And me, Hannah.
So today we're actually going to be looking at a condiment that you almost definitely have in your fridge, but you probably haven't thought about where it's come from. It's ketchup. Now, you think you know her, but you don't. So before we get into it, we're actually going to explain why we've decided to do it.
So basically, Maddie has a phobia of ketchup, so this is going to be a great episode. However, she could only do the ketchup from cafes.
Because it's so much better, but it's so much worse, and it doesn't make sense, but...
We had a full English this morning, and it was literally, like, clear, and that really worried me, and I was like, I don't understand how you can prefer this to, like, your normal Heinz, or...
No, I can't.
No.
It's an ick for me, like,
Yeah.
a serious problem. Hence why I've dressed as a mourner, and Anna's dressed as
I've got full ketchup.
So we're actually going to take a trip back to China, 300 BCE to be exact, where fishermen did the job of obviously fishing, and they would go out and they would catch big batches of small fish. Now, these batches were too big to eat all in one go, but the fishes were too small to preserve individually. So what do you do with loads of fish and not enough people to eat it? You ferment it. So what they would do is they would get these big, sort of like barrel-y baskets, and they would fill it up with fishes, and then they'd layer loads and loads of salt on, and they would put it on the outside of the villages, and they would leave it in the sun, and the sun would help the breakdown of the fish. So the enzymes that were in the fishes would break down the proteins, and it would cause like a really, really horrible smell, obviously.
Yeah.
But you would have the result of this dark brown fishy liquid, and you would strain it and you would drain it, and then you would use it as seasoning. Yum. But it wasn't just the Chinese that had found out about this. It was also quite popular in Greece. However, they didn't run with it like the Romans did. The Romans, when they invaded Greece and conquered it, they were like, this is incredible. Let's just get our whole cuisine wrapped around this sauce, which they called garum. Now, it was incredibly important to the Romans because when they were going to invade places, they didn't want to just be eating boring food. They wanted to have some seasoning. And obviously, because it's fermented, it takes a long time to go out of date, if it even goes out of date. It's such a strong liquid that you don't need a lot of it, so you don't have to carry
And it would
tons of
keep.
with you. And it
Yeah.
keeps because it's been fermented. So it was great. But when they started conquering other places, the areas, they started to get a whiff for it as well. They're like, I want some. So there became a massive production line across the Mediterranean where the Romans would set up these factories that could make thousands of gallons of garum, and it became really popular across Europe.
This job, because it wasn't a pleasant job, as Maddie said, it was a stinky job. I mean, they had to leave it out in the sun, and the fermentation process would take anywhere between several months up to a year. So you can imagine heat and fish, they don't mix. So yeah, so the people who were working doing this were either Roman slaves or labourers. Of course, it wasn't a pleasant job, so... And what they would do is they would gut all these small fish, and they would put guts, bones, every part of this fish, because the guts are key, we'll get to that in a minute. And they would chuck them in either these large stone tanks or large clay pots, and these were called amphorae. And what they would do is they'd put all the fish in, and then they'd cover it in brine. Now, brine back in the day was a mixture of loads of different types of salts and seawater. So they'd cover it, they let it sit out in the sun to start the fermentation process. So what happens during this fermentation process is that essentially the sun helps create the bacteria in the gut. And what it does is that bacteria helps break down the flesh of the fish. And this is what makes this really thick liquid that we know as garum. Now, the Latin word garum actually specifically refers to a pre-fermented sauce made of blood and viscera. I didn't know what viscera meant, so for people who don't know, viscera is essentially your intestines. So it was like that,
Vile.
the word is exactly the description of what it is. But, you know, it sounds vile, but if it wasn't for this process, you wouldn't get this amazing flavour that everyone was obsessed about. So when the chemical decomposition happens, this is essentially where the magic happens. So, you know, the bacteria is broken down the guts, broken down the flesh, and basically what it's done is it's starting to break down the fish's proteins and turn them into amino acids. So the acids that were produced were glutamic and also glutamate. Now, don't forget glutamate because we're going to come back to that later.
Full circle. I'm going to ruin it now. Basically, the Roman Empire obviously collapsed. And along with that, so did the Garum making facilities.
Shame.
And Europeans carried on for the next 1,000 years without it. They were like, right, okay, a loss is a loss. Well, I suppose they did. They probably didn't. Probably because they spoke a different language and they wouldn't. Anyway, not the point. I'm off on one now. But a bit later, you had the Dutch East India Company. So the Dutch and the British ended up going to Southeast Asia, where they started to do trades there. By trades, I mean it was quite exploitative. It wasn't ideal, but it was where they rediscovered this fishy sauce. They're like, oh, I need some.
She's back.
She's back and she's better than ever.
Yeah.
So they would take barrels of this and they started shipping it to Europe and then to the Americas, and it became a massive thing in the Western Hemisphere. They were loving it. And now there were two names that it was known as. It was Ketchup and Ketchup.
That is correct.
Yes, I was going to mess that up. But when it got to the British ports, like me, the British were struggling to say it. So they ended up just calling it Ketchup.
Ketchup.
And that's where the name was birthed. But come 1700s, China's like, they're not having it anymore. They're like, we don't want to trade with you. This is not really beneficial for us. So the Brits and the Dutch, they were kicked out of the trading industry. But they're like, the British people are like, nah, this can't run. Like, we cannot lose it again. I can't wait for another 1,000 years to have this fish sauce back. So this is when the experimentation started happening. And at this time, there were loads and loads of cookbooks that started coming out and different recipes. And they were basically just trying to imitate it. So they used different foods such as oysters and anchovies and mushrooms, vile, and walnuts to try and recreate this. I don't know if you want to speak a bit on the older recipes, because we got our chef here.
So, like Maddie said, people started using alternatives because they were like on a quest to find this flavour. And also, you know, it was either getting really popular, either getting really expensive, and just it was inaccessible. So people needed other ways to get what they were missing. So other recipes that I found included horseradish and cucumber, which I don't know how you go from fish to cucumber, but they went there. Like they were on a mission to find this flavour.
That seems less weird than mushrooms in my opinion.
But I feel like mushrooms have like a stronger flavour. Like if you think of fish and you're trying to re-imitate that flavour, and you go from like a mushroom that's like a bit more earthy, a bit stronger, and then cucumber's just watery. I don't.
It's like an ocean.
Anyway, there were loads of recipes is what we're trying to say. So one of the recipes that we've done for you today, it was the first ever published recipe for ketchup. Now this came out in 1729 in a cookbook called The Complete Housewife. And this used anchovies. So I found the ingredients for this recipe. What I didn't manage to find, I was looking and looking and looking. I didn't manage to find the method. And I thought, I'm not going to have a repeat of last week and the week before and the week before that. So I wanted to be safe. So luckily I found a recipe. Now this recipe came from the Dunn family of Gately Park. And this was released in the 18th century. I don't know the exact date. It was exactly the same as the other recipe, except the only difference in ingredients, I think, was vinegar. That was it. But this came with a method and I thought, let's play it safe. So yeah, to take you through the recipe, I had to halve this because I didn't want to make loads of like, if it is manky anchovy sauce, you know what I mean? So what you will need for this recipe is, to be precise, 113.4 grams of anchovies, 1.5 pints of white wine, half a lemon, 3.55 grams of cloves and mace, and 56.7 grams of shallots. I can't say shallots. Shallots.
I can't say a lot of
I can't say a
things.
lot of words, but anyway. So for this recipe, it was really easy to make actually. So you put the white wine in the pan, you slice up half the lemon, you put the lemon slices in, and you also add the anchovies. Now you've got to let this boil for about anywhere between 15 minutes to half an hour. Once that's done, and you'll see the colour changes and everything, and it's starting to become a bit thicker, and the white wine will have reduced significantly, that's when you want to take it off the boil and you want to strain it through muslin, cheesecloth, whatever you have. The recipe says muslin. Then you would add cloves, mace.
Muslin cloth.
What's it called?
I thought it was a muslin cloth.
What did I say? Muslin.
Muslin.
Well, there you go.
But I don't know. I might
Muslin.
be wrong. I might be wrong.
Muslin.
I feel like
Muslin. Cloth.
Muslin. Yeah.
Okay, you put it through a muslin cloth, yeah, and then you have to add cloves, mace, and sliced nutmeg. Now you return it, Maddie. You return it to the boil for around 10 to 25 minutes. Now we went from 1.5 pints of white wine to about a tablespoon of sauce. I was shocked. Like, I know things reduce, but this reduced beyond my beliefs. And then there were just too many shallots and too many shallots and too little sauce. So I just added a few of the shallots.
If you're listening on the audio podcast, you can't see Hannah's face and how much she's stressing every time she says it.
Shallots. I will get there one day. So we were left with this lovely brown sauce because ketchup ended up becoming a name for any brown sauce. It was any brown sauce or spice sauce. So
it's very true.
So
it inspired a lot of other sauces, but ketchup was just the umbrella term. So
yeah, other sauces that were inspired on the quest of finding this flavour were, I can't say this either, Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire. Yeah, it is Worcestershire.
Worcestershire sauce and brown sauce, which we also know as HP sauce today. Now, brown sauce is actually really interesting how it came about. So it came about in 1899, and the person who made this was Frederick Gibson Garton. Now, he was a grocer from Nottingham, and he had some debts he had to pay off.
Oh.
So what he did is he made this recipe, and he sold it to the Midlands Vinegar Company. And that's how brown sauce saved him. Oh, yeah. Maddie, do you know why HP sauce is called HP sauce? Because I didn't, and I'm really embarrassed that I didn't know why.
Well, that makes two of us, because I don't know.
Do you know how the bottle has the Houses of Parliament on it?
Are they the Houses of Parliament?
Houses of Parliament, mate. And there's a reason for this.
No, you're lying.
No, I'm being serious. I had the same reaction. But there's a reason for this. And the reason is because it was believed that they served it in the restaurant in the Houses of Parliament in the early 20th century. So that's why it got its name. Now, although we don't know whether brown sauce has the same Asian origins as ketchup, we believe it probably does, because one of the key ingredients in brown sauce is tamarind. And tamarind is a huge ingredient in Asian cuisine, and it's used to add sourness to a lot of dishes. So
it's really one big complicated family tree if you're,
it really is, if we were to dissect it. So yes, that's how those sauces came about.
Interesting. So now we're actually going to learn a bit about where the tomatoes came in. So we're going to take it back a notch to the 1500s, and tomatoes had been introduced into Britain at this time, brought over from the South Americas. But back in the day, people used to eat off of, I might say this wrong, this is an episode of just saying things wrong, I think it's pewter plates. And pewter plates contained lead in them back in the day. And because tomatoes are very acidic, it would absorb, like the liquid from them would absorb the lead from the plates. So people would eat it, and then they get sick, and then they get lead poisoning, and then they would die. So instead of, trying to figure out why the plates were having, they just didn't put two and two together, basically. It's like me in the morning, stupid. They were like, no, we're not messing with tomatoes anymore, and tomatoes were like a big no-go. However, in the Americas, it was a bit of a different story. They had put 2 and 2 together and they were like, tomatoes, fine, whatever. So introduce James Mees. He decided to add tomatoes to the concept of ketchup because he was a physician and major food hobbyist. He just liked experimenting. So this tomato sauce that he created, it was very watery, and it had brandy in and shallots, and it was just this very thin consistency, almost like a drink, really. But he designed this at the perfect time because towards the end of the 1800s, he created this in 1812. Towards the end of the 1800s, bottling was becoming a massive thing, like bottling of foods. Consumers, they were going a bit crazy for it. They were like, wow, give me some. I need something pre-made. So then the recipe changed a bit so that it was easier to bottle. So instead of having brandy and shallots in, instead it was salt and sugar and sodium benzenate, which is sodium benzenate, which is a very questionable preservative, and you probably don't want to be eating it at all, really. But then, a bit later, comes along Henry J. Heinz. Now, he started making some other bottled things like pickles and stuff like that, but it's not really the success he was looking for. So he decides to adopt this ketchup thing, and he starts making a variety of different ketchups. But then he was like, basically the health queen of back in the day. He was like, let's make this a bit more natural, let's make this a bit better, people are going to appreciate it more. So instead, he started using much riper tomatoes and vinegar, and he took out the sodium benzenate.
Sorry, that's so ironic. Sorry, can I just chip in?
Yeah.
Because basically, you get a Heinz bottle of ketchup, not only is it extortionately expensive nowadays, but it's half sugar. So Heinz, you lost your ways throughout the 100 years. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
Caramel's looking at us funny.
Yeah,
eating shallots.
No, you just buy full sugar. You can buy half sugar ketchup.
Okay, sorry, you can buy the less sugar ketchups, but God
It's not
knows
the
what
point.
chemicals
It's the
they're
blue
putting
one.
in there.
It's just less sugar.
Or you do a Maddie and you just don't buy ketchup because
Or you just make it like I did in a minute, but go on.
Anyway, so this created a much thicker, goopier, like, I was going to say liquid, but it's not. It's
like
a
a
sauce.
sludge.
It's a sauce. That's what it is. It created a thick, goopy sauce. What are you laughing for?
Sorry.
So this ended up creating a thick, goopy sauce. And this was like, the world loved it. It started being like shipped abroad, and people were like, they wanted more. And so now it is in about 90% of American people's homes, and as for British people, I think it's around like 97%. People
Crazy.
love ketchup. Big question mark. Are you okay? Anyway, sorry.
That's not very nice. I love ketchup. I've
can
come
tell.
on theme today. I'm wearing red for our listeners.
Anyway, so yeah, that's basically a brief history of ketchup.
I'd like to say something about Mr. James Mees.
Would you know?
I would. I think, a lot of time credit isn't given to the right person in history.
Oh dear. Oh no.
Now, from sources, James Mees, well, basically from every source, James Mees is like, oh, you were the man that made tomato ketchup. However, the recipe I did today was from 1801, 11 years before Mr. James Mees, and it was published in a cookbook called Sugar House Cookbook by Sandy Addison.
I've been scammed. I'm sorry. Scratch your whole history
History
lesson.
will scam you, but it's important to mention his name because he's the guy who gets credit. However, there were recipes before that. Why he got credit? I don't know if Sandy was a woman or not.
Probably.
It's a whole other episode, but anyway. So, I'm going to go into, because we've done 2 recipes for you today, because why not? There were so many ketchup, so many ketchup recipes we could have done. So, we thought we kind of have to say thanks to the tomato. It's in the nowadays. So, how did they do it? Well, I had to, not half the recipe, I had to 20th the recipe, because it made for a lot of big batches. So, For this recipe, you're going to need 5 tomatoes, you're going to need around 11 grams of salt, you're going to need several different spices. Mace, nutmeg, allspice, cloves, cinnamon, ginger and pepper to taste. Remember, ketchups were heavily flavoured and heavily seasoned because, again, people were on this quest to find the flavour. So people were chucking stuff left, right and centre to achieve this flavour. So what you're going to do is, the tomatoes have to be quite ripe. That's a key thing. And you're going to squeeze them with your hands. Now, I did this. The tomato went absolutely everywhere. The household owners will probably kill me if I don't get it off the walls. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add the salt and you're going to boil it for 6 minutes. And you've got to keep stirring the pot because it's going to stick or it can burn, and that's the last thing we want. So then once that happens, you've got to press all the liquid through a fine sieve with a silver spoon. I don't know why they wanted a silver spoon, but it's what the recipe said.
Maybe it's because it's metal, so you already get that
Maybe the connection.
connection.
But anyway, you sieve it through with a silver spoon until only skin is left in there. So you've really got to squeeze all the juices out, because sometimes the pulp will come out, and yeah. So then after that, you bring it back to the pan. You're going to add your mace, your nutmeg, your allspice, your cloves, your cinnamon, your ginger and your pepper to taste. And then you're going to boil over a slow fire till it's quite thick, stirring constantly. And then you bottle it when it's cold. Now, I did 2 variations. I did one where we thank Sandy Addison from 1801, but also one with James Mees and what he added, because James Mees added shallots and brandy. So there's another bowl where I've added shallots and brandy just to see like how the taste differs. Yummy. So we haven't actually explained what this flavour was, or what its name was. Now, you might be familiar with the term umami. You might not be. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like
It's a very
strong, fishy flavour.
Very
and that's
rich.
Exactly, rich is a really good way to describe it. And that's what people are on the hunt for. Now, if you remember, I mentioned glutamate earlier from the garum when all the fish was broken down. These were the amino acids produced. Glutamate is also found in tomatoes. Now, I wonder whether James Mees actually knew this or not. Because I feel like, because if he had known, obviously you're going to whack it in.
Well, he's a physician.
So it probably makes sense that he did. From my sources, I haven't found.
Isn't it? Not...
Yeah, but he also like experimented with. He was what was food hobbyist was his title.
Hannah.
Basically, me, isn't it? So yeah, that's the fun fact. Also, another fun fact. James Mees referred to tomatoes in his recipe as love apples. This was because tomatoes used to be believed that they were an aphrodisiac. So you might be getting the ick, but maybe it'll be handy.
Absolutely not. I sort of can't bet. I can't bet if I see a guy eating tomato ketchup, it's an instant like, no, I'm sorry, no, can't do it. Like, I can't explain it either. I feel bad. Like I feel like a terrible person.
I even feel embarrassed having ketchup in front of you.
Oh, that's quite lovely.
So I'm like, shouldn't judge me so hard right now.
I do.
I think it's time to try it. This is the first episode where the recipe went well, I think. It might taste disgusting, but the fact that it kind of looks like how I thought it would and how it should have looked.
Do you want to feel my palms are actually quite sweaty?
No, she's... Oh, you're just dry skin. I thought she was... she was clammy, sorry.
No, I am clammy.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to get a bowl for Maddie because she has warned us that she might throw up. So, see you in a mo. Hello and welcome back. We have our ketchup, catsup, whatever you used to call it. This is our anchovies one. I'm so excited to try it.
It does. It smells quite good actually. Like
it does smell like it smells like a bit of a steak sauce, you know.
No, but I can't.
It's really strong.
Pin it. If I figure out what it actually smells like, I'll put it in the. It's like a.
It's really strong.
It's like what you'd have on a steak, like a mushroom.
Exactly, something like that.
White wine. Yeah, okay.
Right.
There is also a bowl.
There's a bowl in case Maddie doesn't feel too well. I'm sorry. Right. The thought of it,
the
though.
whole thing.
You want to do it right? Okay, whole thing. Right, cheers.
Cheers.
God! Oh, that's disgusting. I'm so sorry. Oh, I can't give you this bowl back. I know. I'll keep it. Oh. Do you know what it is? Yeah, I was saying to Maddie earlier, like, I used to be really good with sour things, and recently, I don't know when it started happening, maybe like the past month, anything sour I cannot hack, and that like blew my mouth away. Oh, fuck, it got me crying. That was so bitter and sour, and didn't taste the fish. It tasted a.
It was very lemony.
You did well. Did you enjoy it? I did say I shouldn't bring the bowl back. Right, let me just leave that there. Let's move Let me just drink some water, sorry. It was an experience.
Yes, I won't do it again.
No, I think if it was we did eat a whole spoonful just like that. I think if it was a steak.
At first it wasn't too bad, but then it hit you. Boom.
Right, so now we're going to try 1801.
My body is like actually shaking.
Sorry, yeah. Now this is the one that James Mees didn't do. It was Sandy Addison.
Can you pass me a bowl, please? Somebody, not that one.
Sorry. Right. A whole spoon again.
I'm ready.
You don't have to if you don't want to. Chin chin, salud. Sure. It's so salty. Oh,
that was.
I'm sorry. Are you okay? Do you want some water? I haven't. Look, here's some water. I've got a tissue. I've got so much going on. Where's the tissue? Sorry.
Sorry, guys. There's like spit and tomato in my hand. Oh, my lipstick's come off as well.
That was so. Do you know what? When I was putting the salt in, I was like, surely this is going to be so salty. I don't like salty things either. Like too salty. That was just so. That was vile.
Hannah found what the.
I followed the recipe so well. You were brave enough to try the final one, Mr. James Mees.
Is it any nicer?
I haven't tried it. We never tried before this. Okay. This one's with brandy
I'm not asking,
and
Harry.
shallots.
It looks even worse.
We can do half teaspoon. That smells strong. I've never tried brandy even.
Have you not?
No.
I'm gonna
You're shaking.
shaking. I'm shaking.
Right, alright. Okay, cheers. That's so much better.
That's not that bad.
That's really nice.
No, that's a stretch.
That's crazy that just from, maybe that's why James Mees got the credit, because that actually, it actually tastes quite nice. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching our episode about ketchup. We hope you learned something, we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again next week.
I'm never getting a boyfriend.